Hi guys, is gold and silver in a bubble? Now before you make a knee-jerk split-second reaction and start saying things like gold and silver is money and there's no way that it could ever be a bubble because it's had value for 3,000 years, 8,000 years, whatever. Why don't you stop and consider this? Let's talk about a commodity without naming the name of the commodity real quick. Talk about some things, some patterns that have happened in the last several years. There was this commodity that everybody was investing in. Everyone said was going to keep going up and up and up and up and up. And it couldn't go down because it never went down. This is a commodity that was always a good long-term investment. No matter what you did, if you bought it now, eventually it was going to be worth more, no matter what. So for many, many years, people kept investing into this particular commodity. And for many, many years, it kept going up and up and up and up and up and up and up. And then something happened. The bottom fell out. And I'm sure anybody who's followed the markets, who's paying attention to what's happening in the world economically, knows that I'm talking about the housing market. If you said back in 2003 that housing was going to collapse, people laughed at you. People laughed at Peter Schiff, they laughed at Ron Paul. There were people who saw it coming, but they were considered to be, loony, fringe element types. Surprisingly, things have shifted so much now that I'm going to be considered kind of a loony, fringe element type in this circle by saying what I'm saying. I do believe gold and silver is in a bubble, but I think a lot of people are going to make a lot of money on the way up. The key is knowing when to cash out. It's just like any investment. If you look at it like an investment, if you play it like an investor, then you're going to make money if you're smart, and you're going to lose your shirt if you're not. Because anytime the expansion curve for a price is so exponential like it is right now, you have to be suspicious. It's just like the tulips in Holland back when they were, you could buy a house with it. You have to start looking at it and be careful. Doesn't mean you don't jump on it and ride it to the top, if that's your thing. I'm not telling people not to do that. I'm just telling people don't get religious about it and start thinking that your particular commodity of choice is somehow above all the other market rules of supply and demand. And people would say, it's had value for 8,000 years. And yeah, it's had value for 8,000 years, but that value hasn't been constant. It's you can look back to the 80s where it was $300 an ounce for gold, and silver has fluctuated widely during that time as well. Value is the value of a precious metal in particular has multiple factors involved. One of them is the actual value as a industrial metal. Both silver and gold have uses as industrial metals, and that use will likely continue into the future. So it will always have that base value for whatever that is. And that's hard to determine right now, though, because there's two other factors which are interfering. One is the collapse of the dollar. The dollar's going down, and so just about every other commodity is going up. However, we see something happening with silver and gold that is reminiscent of a bubble, which is that the price is going up faster than the price of other commodities. So it's going up higher in proportion to the dollar than oil and copper and all these other materials that are absolute necessities, and it's expanding faster than the demand for its industrial use. So that brings us to the third factor, which is demand. Demand can drive prices. Everyone knows this. This is supply and demand. Supply and demand. If there's a massive demand on something and a limited supply, price will rise. Price will keep rising, keep rising until the market can no longer support that price. It's just simple economics. It works with every single commodity. Gold and silver are not exceptions to this. The question is, at what point will the market no longer be able to support the price of gold and silver? And at what point will other factors push the demand to reverse? Well, to answer that question, I ask another question. Why are people buying so much gold and silver? Why has demand risen? And to me, it's pretty clear that there's a culture that's been developing on the internet. Also word of mouth on the radio. People promoting gold and silver, saying we got to get gold and silver in order to protect ourselves against what's happening. And that culture builds upon itself. People start thinking they have to buy gold and silver, so they go and try buying it. There's a massive amount of demand that's being generated by this movement. And right now, the people who are in this upward swing have enough resources to keep, pushing the bubble up. They have enough resources to keep buying more, and so that continuing purchasing causes the price to go up, and it adds to the feeling that this commodity is just an explosive commodity, which it is right now. However, that can only go on so long. I'm not saying that the value of the dollar versus the silver couldn't, go to 1,000 to 1 or something like that. It could easily. The question is this expansion in relation to all the other commodities. That's the dangerous part, because if that relationship of silver to, say, oil is not a justified proportion, then at some point there's going to be a checks and balance. There's going to be something that comes in and goes, oh, no, that's not quite right. And to me, it seems that happens when the people who are pushing the demand right now can no longer afford to buy gold and silver. Because at a certain point, if this economy continues down this trend in which we see it going down, at a certain time, people aren't going to be able to buy gold and silver on a regular basis to keep adding to their portfolio. Like I've said before, at a certain point when things are bad, you start having to spend it. And what I believe is the major breaking point of the bubble, when it actually is going to pop, is when the collapse reaches some kind of crescendo, some kind of hot point that makes it really obvious to people that, the shit has hit the fan. It's just bad times are here. And, people who have invested all their money into metals start looking to transfer it into physical goods. Now, if you start thinking about this, and don't get religious about it, just think about it in terms of any other commodity that's out there. What happens when people try to flood the market all at one time with a commodity that's become very valuable? The value drops. If everybody is in bad times, if the economy takes a sudden twist, if for instance World War III breaks out officially, even though I would say that we're already in it, if officially China and United States and Russia are going at it, and the dollar goes to nothing, a lot of people are going to be cashing in their gold and silver. And there's a lot of smart people out there who've been talking about it in these videos, saying they're going to cash in for land and commodities like that. And that's, what I hope is that you do it at the right time. Do it before it's so bad that everybody's doing it. Because what's going to happen is if you wait until now is the time, or you're going to lose everything, You're going to be like those people who are trying to sell their house in the middle of 2008. You cross that point when everybody else is panicking, and it's going to be harder to get out of the market with the amount of money that you invested, or to break even, or to come out ahead. So anyway, to me this is just pretty self-evident. But and when something becomes a religion, it becomes heresy to say things like this. And that's the reason I'm making these videos about gold and silver, is because I don't like it when anything like this, any belief system, steps outside of the boundaries of normal common sense. Don't take it personally. It's just my opinion. Bye.